Welcome, friends, wherever you are, wherever you hail from on this, the 2nd of April. Countdown today, the final countdown to the event which many of us are regarding as a seminal cosmic pulse point in our consciousness evolution. I'm, for one, completely sold on the idea. I've looked into it for a great many years and had an interesting conversation, as some of you will remember, with Elena Danan a few days ago, who herself reckons that we need to be very careful. And I think she's right. We need to be very careful that we don't, that we've done the inner work before we regard these collective dateline events as being our salvation. You know, if people think that they can simply hitch their wagon onto these morphogenetic upshift events without having done the inner work, I think she's absolutely right. That's not going to work. But the fact of the matter is, for humans who are meek of heart and who have actualized and who are now in a state of typhonic consciousness, and those of us who recognized as above, so below, those of us who have connected to the immanent flame, the flame of the central sun, so to speak, which is everything to do with what's coming up. Those of us who've done that, I think, have earned the stripes, so to speak. And when we then collectively lean our attention, our flame, in towards seminal datelines and event horizons, I think it becomes very, very important, not least because that is how and where we undo generations, millennia of black magic. All of us know, looking into this broadcast, know that the cityscape, the city grid, the false light matrix, the ley lines, the energetic intersection points that make up this extraordinary plane of existence is populated with seminal intersections and vector points. The most important of those intersecting vector points, pulse points, have been historically commandeered and gazumped by Babylonian priesthoods, so to speak. That's my terminology. When you understand that things like the Eiffel Tower represent, in a sense, the cock of Baal, it is the most patriarchal and, in a sense, diabolical element, that particular isotope, that particular metal, when it was constructed, why it was constructed, how it was constructed. There's a connection to ancient Tartaria and to Tartarian logic, but that was desecrated and defiled. So we now have edifices and monuments which are still part of the old citadel. And it just so happens, for instance, that the Eiffel Tower in Paris anchors the critical node point in the whole of Europe in respect of sustaining and maintaining the false light grid. So when you remove the Eiffel Tower, for instance, and you instead imbue on that vector point heightened vibral consciousness, the divine plasma of the living sons and daughters of God, we upshift the energetic. We literally dial the energetic of reality out of its diabolical, entropic, dystopian, false light matrix state, and we can literally dial it up into the celestial realms. That's hard science, and we're going to discuss a bit of that today. But the point of this conversation today with some of the most extraordinary pundits in the world on these esoteric subjects is to focus our collective attention on dateline 0, which is the 8th of April, 2024, upcoming next week, as being arguably the most important dateline of our lives thus far. Let's certainly make it thus. And we'll, by the end of this conversation with these extraordinary scientific minds, you're going to understand a great deal more about the hyperdimensional physics and why I'm here sitting, sweating in the Mexican heat, making such grandiose claims. It's important stuff. It is how you and I alchemize a false light reality. It's how you and I disengage the parent corporation from dominion over our lives. It's how you and I step back from the fiction of our lives by leaning into subjects like this, surrendering all that we think we know, because we know fuck all, and really being in a state of grace to receive that benediction of ages, which is upon us as a species, as a genus. Let me first bring back to the Lazarus audience a man who is really the signature of the Lazarus Initiative, David Sereda, beloved friend and compadre. David, great to see you.
Good to be here, Sasha. This eclipse has stumped me more than anything. I mean, what I'm going to present today will surely open some minds and some souls to something that nobody else is presenting on this eclipse. So,
well, stand by on that, David. Yeah. Can't wait to see it. I also want to bring in Pandma Khandro, who joined us last week, a non-dual astrologer with deep roots in Tibetan Buddhism. She offers insight into how celestial events influence our spiritual journey, and her expertise in unlocking eclipse codes, so to speak, provides a deep understanding of the upcoming events' seminal significance. Padma, I have to say, all of my production notes keep calling you Pandma. So, Christy, you need to really check your computer there. But I've been very confused. I thought Pandma is a wonderful name, but it's Padma. Very, very happy to see you again, Padma.
Thanks for having me on again, Sasha. Really nice to be here.
Delightful. And of course, friends, last but not least, the remarkable new discovery of mine with Lazarus, Dr. Alex Ling, hailing from the UK, a man of extraordinary descent, I have to say. We went into this in some detail in the last broadcast, but he is of Chinese Germanian descent. He is the son of the erstwhile Grand Master of the most powerful Freemasonic lodge in Germany. Sorry to do this to you, Alex, again, but that's for new audience members looking in. I've just got to give some of this incredible backstory of yours. And your remarkable father pulled out of the Masonry, despite being at such a preeminent position internationally in Freemasonry. He withdrew and was subsequently, I understand, murdered because of what he had unearthed and discovered within the echelon of the Sabbatean element of Freemasonry, let's just put it that way, connected to extraterrestrial technologies, off-world technologies, and how certain Freemasonic enclaves were trading and auctioning within their own circles certain historical artifacts and technologies which had surfaced, of course, coming through the military, the intelligence and archaeological digs, Royal Geographical Society, Smithsonian Institute, Vatican Library, British Museum, all of that stuff. The Midnight Masons have always received those technologies and those out-of-place artifacts historically as they've been unearthed and discovered, whether they're giant skeletons or whether they're stargates or portals in the Babylonian desert of Iraq, which was very much to do with what was going on with the Bush, the Bush era, and how we raided and ransacked Iraq was very much to do with arcane technologies. But the point being here that Dr. Alex Ling's father was one of those remarkable characters born in generationally into Christy, I've got control of the studio, don't worry. Born into this extraordinary echelon of the Midnight Masons, and your father stymied something that was going to be taking place, which could have had fatal consequences, I believe, possibly for humanity. I'll leave you to take that story further, but Dr. Alex, you, in your own right, are a remarkably accomplished man. You're a medical doctor, and you're a physicist, an astrophysicist, and a tremendous thinker. You're bringing much of what is embedded into the codes, so to speak, of your own genealogy, your own blood song, connected to this arcane Masonic wisdom flame, and you're helping us to make sense of some of it. There's a reason why date lines like this upcoming total eclipse have been, in a sense, misrepresented into the Gestalt. We're not supposed to know that we, as a collective, are able to take those pulse events commandeer them back into the living flame, put our own imagining and dreaming into these vital cosmic points, and thereby manifest the kingdom of heaven on earth. Dr. Alex Ling, you're greatly welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today. And yes, you're absolutely right, Sasha. This is exactly what's happening and what's happened in the past. This is a story which goes back to Sumerian times, Babylonian times. I mean, it's just an ongoing saga of control and enslavement of humans. So in many ways, you can say that...
Oh, have we lost Dr. Alex? Momentarily we have. You're still with me, David?
Yeah.
Okay, let's wait until he comes.
Alex is back on, but you're not. You must not be seeing him. He's on.
I can now see him. Thanks, Christy. Yes. Okay, very good. Alex, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Bring you back in. Continue.
Okay. Yes, so definitely that's one of the points which I've been researching for the last 14 years, 30 years actually to be precise, and so it was not just the saga of my father, but also his connections to numerous other institutions like the Siemens AG electronics company, which has provided all the electronics, of course, to the very well-known place in CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, the old ancient knowledge, which was actually fused together to create that site. I mean, it's just an endless kind of net of knowledge which has been condensed down to this particular point in time to come to this very time in history of the solar eclipse. It's all tailored and designed to come to exactly that.
Very good. Okay, so friends, by way of introduction, we're going to gallop through this. The total solar eclipse is on the April the 8th. It's garnered attention from both the scientific and metaphysical communities, and marks a significant moment where the paths of astronomy and a deeper cosmic inquiry merged. In an interesting development, NASA's latest undertaking, dubbed the atmospheric perturbations around the eclipse path, APAP, curiously names itself after an ancient mythological figure, Apep, the serpent deity from Egyptian mythology, notorious as the sun god Ra's archenemy. So this decision to link the scientific mission with a figure symbolizing darkness and chaos could be seen as an odd choice, and if not a veiled message to humanity. Can I help you? Okay. The stated goal of APEP is to investigate how eclipses impact Earth's upper atmosphere, a seemingly straightforward scientific endeavor. And this blend of modern science with ancient myth leaves us pondering the real agenda behind probing the shadows cast by celestial events. Now, meanwhile, amid their effort to uncover the mysteries of dark matter, CERN recently disclosed finding a ghost-like structure lurking within their particle collider. Oh, did they? Well, this revelation adds a layer of intrigue and perhaps concern. I'd remove the word perhaps and say it's absolutely of concern to their next venture, which is orchestrating the first collisions of proton beams precisely on the day of the eclipse. Now, one can't help but wonder what CERN might truly be delving into, as this alignment of cosmic events and high energy experiments hints at ambitions that could stretch way beyond the mere pursuit of scientific knowledge. So our panel here of experts, Dr. Alex Ling, Pandma Khandro, and David Sereda, will delve into these developments, exploring perspectives. I do want to show very briefly, before we invite David to do his intro piece, just a couple of things which I think are of interest.
Hoy les traigo videos extraños y aterradores que me sorprendieron bastante. Hoy les traigo videos extraños.
David, what are we looking at?
Well, the alien might be a chupacabra, and the smoke ring, it seems to be some type of an energetic emission that is the leftover of possibly a portal. I mean, it's quite possible. I mean, I'm very scientific when I do things, so I'd look at dates and locations and Latin longs and things like that. So I'd have to have more data to really tell you exactly what we're looking at.
Well, what are we looking at with NASA's ambitions right now and the Super Collider's ambitions as those ambitions relate to the 8th of April upcoming?
Okay, that's where I'm going to go, and this is really going to be earth-shattering. So I need to go to present, share screen, entire screen. Here we go. So let's start here. Right here, the first thing you have to know is, can you see this spin direction of the planets? I just want to make sure. Okay, all of our planets are tilted. And what I did as an experiment, and this will tie in perfectly to the eclipse, is I measure their degrees, and I'm including Ceres, the dwarf planet between Mars and Jupiter, and Pluto. Okay, so when I add up all their degrees, this is going to be really shocking. Okay, you can see the 3 eclipses here, but before I go to that, can you see this, my tilt angle of the planets? Okay, so I add up Pluto 120 degrees, Neptune 28.5, Uranus 98, Saturn 26.7, Jupiter 3, Ceres 4, Mars 25 degrees, Earth 23.5, which is what gives us precession, Venus 3, Mercury 2. They total 333.7 degrees. Now, I already knew what that meant right away, because the slope angle of the Great Pyramid's ascending passage is the missing piece of the puzzle to create a full 360-degree oscillation. It's 26.3 degrees, according to Peter Lemaitre. So with that, that is mind-blowing, by the way. So let me just go back to where we are here and stop sharing for a second. This is the ascending passage of the Great Pyramid, which leads you, that's the Grand Gallery, the King and Queen's Chamber. That angle of 26.3 degrees is the missing angle in all of the planets. Let me go back to share screen. And is going to be the angle of the triangle of the 3 eclipses. And this is just stunning what this means, because if you understand that each angle of each planet is representative of a planet, the slope angle of the Great Pyramid's ascending passage, if I add that to 333.7, I have 360 degrees perfectly, not a penny left over in the decimal, which means inversely that it must be the slope angle of a what? A missing planet in our system that is somehow cloaked and somehow has eluded everyone for thousands of years. Now, when I get to my eclipse pattern, you can see the great angle of the triangle is 26.3 degrees on a protractor of all their paths. Now, the first eclipse of August 21st, 2017, at the moment of that eclipse, the mysterious Oumuamua was just coming in, and it would be first noted by astronomers in mid-October. So remember, Oumuamua is coming in on the first eclipse. That date is arguably Jesus's birthday, stated very clearly in the Urantia book, August 21st. And I can mathematically prove that that is his real birthday. But without going into that math right now, the second eclipse, which was last year, October 14th, 2023, is the anniversary of the Fatima miracle in 1917. And guess what day Easter was the same year of the Fatima miracle in 1917? It was April the 8th, the date of the eclipse that is before us right now. So In fact, the real Easter, let me just go, because we were on the Julian calendar originally at the time of Christ and the Romans. And we today, let me just come to, I'm hoping you can see this, my lunar calendar. There you go. 1917, Easter was April 8th. And when you compare a lunar calendar, which the Romans were not on at the time of Christ, I don't know why we have Easter on a lunar calendar, because it's not a lunar phenomenon. Because the eclipse that happened during the crucifixion is not matched by a lunar eclipse nor a Venus transit in the historical record. So some planetary body that is missing is what I'm proposing, aligned with the sun the moment of the crucifixion to cause the eclipse at the crucifixion. Now you'll see that 12 years later, April 8th is also Easter again in 1928. And in fact, in the year of the great 2012, Easter was April the 8th. So what happens, and of course, astronomers know this, when you compare on a Julian calendar, which is what we were at the time of the Romans, our calendar today, which is Gregorian, is almost the same as Julian, but it has one tiny error, which is we have a leap year every 4 years, but there's, in precise timekeeping, about every 130 years or so, you have to add another day, which is why in the 6th century, when we changed, I can actually show you this exactly, from Gregorian to, from Julian to Gregorian calendar, which is really amazing. I mean, you really have to see this. So let me go back to share screen again. You really just have to see this, because when you see the great triangle in the eclipse, when you see this, is 26.3 degrees, which is your ascending angle of the pyramid. You're going to see what it represents is really the missing planet in our system. So what happens is the Julian calendar day of the 4th of October, 1582, suddenly becomes Friday, October 15th, 1582. That's the date of the changeover. In fact, Teresa of Avila dies exactly on that day, which could not have been planned. She dies on the 4th of October, which the same day becomes the 15th of October, 1582, right? So what we're doing is we're absorbing 11 days because of that missing decimal piece, which I've actually calculated, where we have the transition from absorbing the imperfection of the timekeeping of the Julian calendar, and we still have that imperfection in Gregorian. Gregorian just absorbed it over almost about 500 years from when we went to, the Romans started the Julian calendar in about 46 BC, and then at the time of Christ, again, we weren't on a lunar calendar. So my point is, Easter happened on a Julian and Gregorian calendar on a day in April at the beginning that is probably, with the correction, April the 8th. So this eclipse, if I go back to my triangle that I created based on the shadow path, let's just go back to this for a second before I go further.
I need to get some commentary coming in from Padma as well on some of what you're saying.
Okay, let me just show this really quick, and then we'll go to that. So then we go to our triangle, and we see, why do all three of these eclipses that form what is known in the Egyptian ascending passage as the angle of ascension, why does 26.3 degrees complete a 360-degree circle when I add the angles of all the planets in our solar system together? And why are all three dates, exact dates, and I can show this mathematically later for people who are interested, all dates of this phenomenon of the crucifixion, resurrection of Christ, the birthday of Christ, and the miracle of the sun at Fatima, which has never been resolved as a lunar eclipse nor a Venus transit, yet a body, a solar body, a solar system body aligned between the sun, producing the resemblance of an annular ring eclipse, which is what last year's eclipse was on the anniversary of Fatima, October 14th, is only 1 day different, which again can be mathematically explained. So why is that? This puts so much importance for me on this eclipse, because the 26.3 degrees also, really quickly, and then we'll go to a question, is, according to Peter Lemaitre, the angle of from the Great Pyramid of Egypt to the birthplace of Christ in Bethlehem is 26 degrees, 18 minutes, 10 seconds is 26.3 degrees in decimal. So you have what's known as, again, as the Bethlehem angle, discovered in Peter Lemaitre's work, also evident in this eclipse. So with that, I mean, that's just the beginning of what. Did you see that, or are we? No, we're sharing.
We saw that. Thanks very much, Padma. We'll bring you in here. What you've heard from David. What are your cursory comments on what you've heard?
Well, I think it's really interesting, and I think you're all there to represent the masculine way, the scientific way, which I really, really honor. And I think we have a convergence point in many ways. I guess I'm looking from a more tantric perspective at how we dance with time. And when we can see a convergence point between the scientific and the esoteric, then I think we're onto something. And I do concur that we have some very interesting astrological findings when we look actually at Vedic astrology, which for 500 years didn't factor in precession, but for some reason, I believe that was like a cosmic blip, because the rishis and their accuracy in knowing the celestial bodies still has a soul marker for us. Then the Mayan system, because they have a zenith point twice a year, and one of them is actually in April. So there's a zenith point right over Lake Atitlan at midday. So the sun is right above. So these markers in these other systems, and then Jose Arguelles' more kind of woo-woo transpersonal system, they are all creating very big signs of a death rebirth. So in the traditional Mayan calendar, we just started, I think 2 days ago, Tihax, which is the beginning of the healing, the obsidian flint of healing. So we're in a very curative time. And on the day of the eclipse, it's 9 Kame. And Kame is life, death, rebirth energy. But 9 in the Mayan system is the divine feminine. So it's the beginning of the transformation with the divine counterpart, the divine frequency of the feminine. And then in the dream spell calendar, we begin the dog wave spell. And I'll maybe talk about this if I have an opportunity later. Jose's students who I worked with some years ago in Australia believed that the dog energy of the dog is a heart and its service and its soul tribe and Sangha, which I think is we're all getting closer to that. And we begin a 13-day cycle of that. So it's a micro cycle, but it's how they all dance together is what I like looking at, because we see, it's like triangulation. We see something through the dance. And so Jose's students said that whenever they needed to do any important work with the new sphere, it was dog days. So we start the eclipse on a very potent day for us to come together and do this alignment to the new sphere. But I would like to posit that we need to look at the vibrational energy of primordial fields like the grandmothers, true cosmic law that predates man-made law, and understand those primordial principles. Because a lot of people are asking me, what are we going to do in the eclipse? How do we do our part? And I was listening to what you said earlier, and I would like to posit, how do we not frazzle ourselves? How do we not attract false light by wonky mass meditations that maybe create their own egregore of wonky energy? So yeah. I'll talk about that later if I've got an opportunity. And finally, in the nakshatra, higher celestial bodies and how they talk to the moon on the eclipse, we come from Revati, which is at the end of the zodiac, into Ashwini. So we go from an ending to a beginning into a dynamic healing energy. So the stars are all lining up through those 3 systems in a more micro way. But I wanted to say one final thing about, is it APEP? Ahab, serpent deity, is very interesting, that dance with the symbology, because in Vedic cosmology, the sun and the moon hit the serpent, because the serpent is Rahu and Ketu, the karmic nodes, and it's the karmic nodes that are responsible for eclipse energy. But what we have, we have this man-made emulation of inquiry over what we're going to do with the eclipse energy and the dark matter and these things. And actually the whole weight of the eclipse energy on the it is Rahu, which is the future thinking greedy part, which is the head of the serpent, is sitting over in Pisces. And so everything is, and most of the planetary activity is over in Pisces. So everybody's karma is in the spiritual realm. So we've all got this zest for our spiritual self, which no machine can emulate. But it's very interesting, when they appropriate something that's in the mythology of the time. And I just think it's very interesting that they're using the Kemetic version of what essentially the karmic nodes would be, and the relation to the celestial bodies of the sun and the moon, which would be deep function points of eclipse. So I just want to finish there.
Very, very interesting indeed. Very interesting. Just homage to dear Jose. There he was last time I saw him. Bless his heart. Bless his heart. What a remarkable man. Had a very wonderful love affair with that man before he passed in 2011. And I do regard him as one of the seminal incarnations in the last, certainly in the last century or so. APEP comes up immediately. Images pop up. Don't know what this looks like. I mean, David Sereda would probably be the ideal person to speak to that, but have no idea what these symbolize. In any event, Dr. Ling, let's bring you in briefly here for your commentary thus far. We're 35 minutes into the broadcast. Now, what are your thoughts and reflections on what David brings in to this narrative and Padma? Yeah,
I think that's a very important point. And I think also that yes, there's so many other additional points which I could make. The snake symbol and everything. There's so many synchronicities to my research as well, which I've done in Turkey, in Göbekli Tepe, in Karahan Tepe. There, the snake is also one of the drawings on one of the big basins which contain the T-shaped pillars. I mean, it's just a very important point. I think it all kind of points directly to the eclipse, as pointed out also on the pillar 43 in Göbekli Tepe. So coming to some sound and these kind of, I have sent an image actually to Christy. I don't know if she is able to draw this one up. It's quite an interesting image because it ties in with the passage of the eclipses, which David has just shown. Don't know if that's possible. Send it on WhatsApp, so it was just a last-minute kind of addition. However, we did go to an ancient site, and we took a bit of water from one of the ancient stones, and we used the crystallography actually to just analyze the water and see if the water would communicate with us, with the question in mind: what is the most important event coming up for human history? And on this slide, which I sent forward, it showed actually this A, which is the passage of the eclipses in the most beautiful rainbow colors, and that was created by the water which we collected from the ancient site. So it was quite an days. Yeah. So this is just the semi-frozen water from the ancient site, and our scientist, who was so great to take a shot from the crystals in that way, so that it was enhancing all the rainbow colors. So I think there is a lot of information which is connected to our ancient sites and in history, coming from our ancestors, pointing to directly that specific point in time, which is so important for humanity. And I do believe that we have all the tools. We don't have to overcomplicate things to go and join our consciousness, to rejoin humanity to that point. And as you now I working with a sound which is a hum, which is a very simple sound. Everybody can do this. There's no learning really involved in this. And the hum is on the C4 note. It's a primordial sound. It fits with the bees. It fits with so many sounds in nature. Just of recent, a year ago, this sound has been recorded. It was a gravitational sound wave from space, which actually talks from being like the blueprint of creation. So this sound is within us, and we can recreate it. We all are creators anyway. We are connected to water, and it's just really, really simple.
So, Dr. Alex, I mean, David Sereda is an acknowledged expert in frequency and sound and these abstractions. Can you go in a little bit more to the source code of this particular hum? Are you saying it is just the hum of the Adamite, of the angelic human? I mean, that anyone just going is carrying the tonality, or is there some unique hertz or frequency?
No, we had actually we had I just given a talk yesterday, and we were in a church, and one of our plan is, if you like, to create this hum with as many people as possible around the world. We have a website everybody can join for free. No tickets involved at all. So, and the aim is that so many people are humming as possible around the world at that moment of the eclipse, to kind of tune in with all the waters around the world as well. However, the point was, which I'm trying to make, is yesterday we had this talk for the first time in a church, which was known to be a church which was connected to a Freemason kind of history. And it was quite important for us to go there to create a new blueprint, if you like, to eliminate some of the old energies. So 140 people, I think, came to this event. That's as much as we could fit into this smaller church. And in the end, we did all the hum together. Now, the reason why we choose the hum is there is not really, we know that kind of frequency we can use, but the harmonics are a different spectrum of it. So we can use like the 256 frequency, but the hum, which is a primordial sound, has so many different harmonics that it's very difficult to pinpoint that. So what we did is we had two different groups. So one was in a church, and they didn't get any kind of kind of guidelines in terms of a sound from the tuning fork, or the sound, what it should be like. And the other group, which we did record previously, did have some form of guidance, and the outcome was completely identical. So that shows that we don't need really any guidance in terms of knowing exactly what the hum sounds like, because in the group, it all comes together. We have all different harmonics, and the center sound of this group, this group hum, was coming to exactly the same sound and same frequency as the primordial sound. And that's what I mean. It's all within us.
That's fascinating. David, your thoughts on that?
Well, he showed an image of the crystals in the bowl, and it forms the letter A with the crossbar, which again is the shape of our, you see that? I'd like to measure that angle. Let me just check it. I'm just on the screen. I can actually check that with my protractor, basically. Oh yeah. Like we're right there. So let me show you something. Okay. That manifestation of that angle for the, there you go. So you're right. I mean, I'd have to do it exact in my spare time, but you're right within tolerance of 26.3 degrees. So watch this. Present, share screen, entire screen. Watch. Okay, so the Guadalupe Virgin that appeared in our calendar would be winter solstice, December 22nd, 1531. So this is the advent of the birth of the Spanish conquering of the Americas. So I decided to mathematically correct the tilt angle of her head by going nose to the mid head and bringing the nose back to center line, established by a little cross right here in the center of her prayer. And she's 26.3 degrees, which is, again, the same angle that you just showed in the bowl. But she also denotes an eclipse. You notice at the bottom here of the tilma, which was manifested, that's a black eclipse of the moon. And the only way that can happen, I got my little cutouts here. Here's the sun. And during an eclipse, this is the moon, eclipses the sun. But notice we don't get a black crescent yet, unless I add another body. You see? You see? Let me just go this way. There you go. Now I have a black crescent. But that requires a third unknown body to produce the black crescent. I have the sun, the moon, and a third body. And we don't know what that third body is, but I know what it is. So again, you go back to the crucifixion of Jesus. The sun becomes darkened, but there is no lunar eclipse. There's no Venus transit on record, and astronomers have checked this. So what did it? And in the miracle of the sun at Fatima in 1917, there was no lunar eclipse and no Venus transit. So they basically, astronomers today say, well, all those people were deluded because what they saw at Fatima, October 13th on their 1917, we were on Gregorian calendar then. Although, again, every 130 or 40 years, you're losing another day, which is why last year's eclipse was October 14th and not the 13th. So what I'm saying is there's a missing body in the solar system, and antimatter physics and the antimatter physics community has already acknowledged decades ago that you can have antimatter planets in an antimatter solar system, but you don't see them except for periodically. So my theory, Sasha, on why NASA is sending the 3 rockets in the tail is they know this. They know this. And I could get deeper and deeper and deeper into the proof of this, that there's another body that may become visible, and they want to obscure by creating light in the tail of the shadow so that we can't see it. Now, again, an antimatter planet might appear and may elude detection, but mathematically, let me just show this really quick. It is very clear from what I presented earlier in the initiative that the model my wife gave me from the other side, which is this, if I take 591 days after my wife died, divided by the golden ratio, I get Earth's exact sidereal time. Divided by the golden ratio, again, I get Venus. Divided by the golden ratio, I get a planet between Venus and Mercury with an orbit of 139.51 days. And without going into all the other stuff here, why that matters is because the date of that orbit lines up perfectly with Fatima, and it lines up perfectly with, so 2 orbits of 139 takes us to October 13th, 14th, 15th. 1 orbit of Fatima lines us up with the Buddha's birthday and Jesus's ascension day, but which oscillates a little bit like a snake. So now we're going to get into the snake. So if you look at a lunar calendar, I'll show you what a lunar calendar looks like on Yom Kippur. If I can find my Yom Kippur screenshot. So what happens like with Easter? Again, let's just go to the particular dates we're looking at in this eclipse. So again, if I go to share screen really quick, this will be my last graphic that I'll show in this little section. If we go to a lunar calendar, again, it doesn't matter what date you track on a lunar calendar. It could be Yom Kippur. It could be anything. When you transpose it onto our Gregorian calendar, Again, you'll see April 8th in 1917. You'll see it 12 years later, again in 1928. And in fact, in 2012, like I said, Easter was April 8th. So the argument, and this argument is actually gone on inside of the churches, that we need to agree upon one day that is really Easter on the solar calendar of perfection, which is the sidereal or tropical year, which are only as a razor blade different than each other. What was the real date? And I think this eclipse denotes, because April 8th it's very clear that in early April, actually, right now in Ramadan will end, according to my assistant, who's a Muslim, Shiroz, April the 9th. That's interesting too.
Yeah.
Right. The other dates that I have match the orbit of planet 139. In the Bible, in the New Testament, the word for heaven, which is Uranos in the Greek, it appears 2 orbits of 139. It's 139 times 2. That's how many times the word heaven appears in the New Testament. So is heaven a fictitious interdimensional place, or what I'm saying, is it a planet where gods and goddesses have resided for millennia, but somehow that planet has eluded us, or are they using a technology to cloak it? I don't know. But
right.
The alignment eclipse
I'm wondering, does Lilith have anything to do with this? No, I know nothing about astrology, but my master in the late 80s told me that before I died, the biggest cosmic event that I would bear witness to would have a direct connection to Lilith. I don't know what that means.
Well, I know what that means. Maybe,
before I pass to
Padma, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you've got your
mic. I'll just something with you, Sasha, and everybody else. Basically, Jose Arguelles also believed that there was a missing planet. He believed it was Maldek. Its name has been Maldek. And he believed also the way the mathematics work of the solar system, you could see it had a missing counterpart to the Earth. And what he also stipulated was that in the in the vibrational frequency and the characteristics of what the missing planet, kind of like almost, he saw it as almost a twin flame planet to Earth, that Maldek very much related to the energy of the serpent, which was why we have problems with serpent energies, you know, lower vibrational, like lust and greed, over egoic nature, things like this, and this yearning that many people have for a soulmate because of this presence that is lacking anatomically. And it may be the energetic imprint, because of course in some quantum timeline, Maldek, or whatever we want to call it, still exists. So it can be that the vibrational essence of something is still there, just like we have stone circles in Australia, like the Mullumbimby stones, which are seen as the largest star maps, on the oldest star maps on the planet. And they still have a frequency, even though people have taken away the stones. You can still tap into their quantum data because they have been there in the ever-present now. So I'm just wondering, in that form, is that essence, which some people might call Maldek, is it imprint that can still exist now as antimatter coming into play, but it has a very deep relationship to us and our collective quest through duality, through the lower chakras, and really coming on the day of the eclipse into this expression of the heart, where we have to move into higher collective aspiration rather than singular manifestation, like I want that partner, I want that car, I'm having a manifesting course. You know, we have to come into the dream time, which is non-conceptual grandmother weaving, and that's the true reclamation of the primordial, you know, the creatrix.
Beautifully stated there, Padma, absolutely beautifully stated. Thank you for that. David, Maldek and Lilith.
Well, let me show you something, because you brought up the rocket being the serpent, and this is what, thanks to this photographer, who I'll credit here in a second, shows us, is if you're looking from Earth, this is what the phases of the moon look like over 28 days, which is like the tail of a coiled serpent, right? And if you were from the moon looking back at the Earth, it would look like that. That's why our dates for Easter or Yom Kippur, any date that follows a lunar calendar on a graph, actually looks like that. I'll show you. This is what, here you go. This is what Yom Kippur looks like. And Yom Kippur lines up periodically to, and this is between, this is a period of 24 years, starting October 13th, the miracle of the sun at Fatima. Again, 2 orbits of planet 139 will line up by the date of Fatima periodically over the 24 years, multiple times, which is seen at the top of my graph. Why does it go up and down like a serpent? Because this is what the moon looks like from Earth over just 1 month, right? So if you do that over a year, you'll have a much longer looking serpent. So it doesn't matter what the date is, but here's what's shocking about this date. Jesus' ascension date and year does the same thing. And this periodically comes into mid-May and June, which again is the Buddha's birthday. So watch again what happens. And again, I mean, I could spend more time with people on these later to really understand what a lunar calendar really does and why the Easter date keeps changing, and probably was April 7th or 8th in the very beginning, hence the eclipse we're going into.
Right.
But it is really clear that the way we keep time, and even the way we keep time today, is not 100% perfect. It can vary by 20 to 30 minutes a year in perfect timekeeping. We don't know how to do it. So when the universe manifests an eclipse like that with these 3 dates, and August 21st being the date of Jesus' birth in Urantia, his date of anointing was actually in our calendar January the 6th and 7th, which is when the Orthodox celebrate Christmas. But that's not the date of his physical birth. They're 139 days apart, Sasha. That's what I'm saying.
Very
you go
good.
to August 21st, 139 days, you'll be at January 7th. You go another 139 days, you'll be at the ascension date of Jesus. So again, all of that is in this eclipse. All of it. So why?
I'm none the wiser as to the Lilith question, incidentally.
Yeah, the Lilith is the goddess companion of the god. And again, there's 2 obscuring gods in the Old Testament. One is an evil god who is the deceiver god, who is overlaid with an enlightened god. And then once you name them, it gets all mixed up. You don't really know who you're looking at. But Lilith was removed, and she goes by other names like Asherah, and again, in different cultures, her name is different. The female companions, like Jesus and Mary Magdalene, Magdalene gets removed, turned into a prostitute. Vibia Perpetua, Thecla of Iconium, all the illuminated women in Christianity were removed by the Roman Church. They removed all of them. And so the companion god, the companion of the god of the Bible, Lilith, gets removed so that everything looks like the god Jupiter, an all-male conquering god.
So we lost what's the likely or possible context to the upcoming cosmic event?
Well, again, this event is the moon and the sun. It's the marriage of the moon and the sun. It's the marriage of the masculine and feminine. In fact, that's why your eclipses in the book of Revelation, also in the book of Revelation, if you read your eclipse properly, I have the verse in my computer here. It requires a third missing body to produce a red sun, a red moon eclipse, and a solar eclipse at the same time. You can't do that with one moon. You need another body, a missing body. And nobody sees that in the book of Revelation. But NASA, I believe, Sasha, why they're sending up the rockets, why CERN is getting fired up on April 8th is, if you really look at the founding fathers and the founding of NASA, they've been using Greco-Christian symbolism in the naming of all their missions since the beginning. Apollo is the Greek god of music and war, and Artemis is the Greek god of the moon. So when you see the merging of the sun and the moon, that is the masculine and feminine marriage. This is a marriage. And the 26.3 degrees, which is evident in the Guadalupe version's neck angle. It's evident in the Great Pyramid slope ascending passage is the angle of ascension. So this is a moment, possibly, I'm saying possibly by mid-May to mid-October, we might actually see this hidden body for the first time since Fatima.
Right.
Since Fatima.
Let me bring Dr. Alex in here. Alex, you've heard a whole bunch of different ideas and notions espoused here. Your reflections on what you've heard, and then I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, again, it's so complex. There's so many things. Lilith, I know it from Mesopotamia, for example, first wife of Adam as well in the Bible. So there's all sorts of different stories, of course, connected to it. Then later on, it was hijacked by the Egyptians as well. So there's all sorts of different things. Asteroids, there are a lot of asteroids around at this moment in time. There's also the return of one of the asteroids, which is ironically called the Devil's asteroid on the 21st of April, I believe it is, in the constellation of Taurus. I mean, there's all sorts of things, which are added to the whole palette of things. But yeah, very, very interesting concepts, and many of these ancient scripts, of course, which I've been researched, has really connected to David's knowledge and to David's research. So I can definitely say there's a lot of similarity here. And yes, he's right. There's supposed to be another body in the sky, whatever that is going to be. So there's a lot of people who believe, for example, there's a second sun. It might be that it has to do with the moment of the eclipse that I came across a lot of ancient texts that actually say that our old sun is going to be removed by a new sun, that we're moving into completely different dimension. I mean, there's all sorts of different theories, but also different takes from ancient texts, of course, which is around from the snake symbol going to Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, the return of the serpent god. I mean, you name it, it's all out there. So it's very difficult to pinpoint really what's going to happen on this particular day. But I tell you something which is important is that we all manifest as much positivity as we can, and that we're not scared or take in any kind of scaremongering for the future. And that is my message, which I'm kind of trying to get through to everybody, because that is something which we should leave behind and just move forward into a much more positive future for humanity.
Quite so. Well, let's just look here at the dynamics of and the distinction between looking at the sun during an eclipse and not looking at the sun during an eclipse. I mean, my takeaway on this is that kind of archaeohistorically, we've been entrained to look out to the skies, either in awe or in horror. So it either elicits tremendous fear, psychoculturally and psycho-civilizationally. Oh my God, the sun's being eaten by the blah, blah. Or conversely, let's look toward that and celebrate a renewal or something or other. I think that they're both, in a sense, two sides of the same coin of the false light adulation. And that's my concern. I got on board with this project, Alex, basically because when we had our first conversation, and the idea was we don't look out there, we don't place attention out there any longer. We use this epochal and axiomatic point to shift our attention to the central sun, to the inner sun, to the immanent flame. This is the Atman, the I am, and how that is the rebirth must occur in that sense, in the immanent atom seed of me here now, us here now. That is morphogenetic upshift, but only once we have withdrawn the attention from false light, iconoclasticism, idolatry, blah, blah, blah. So that's my takeaway from this. I'm keen to know what you variously think about this idea of looking out there. I mean, there's also this notion that it's tremendous bad luck to actually look with the physical eyes at the sun whilst it's being eclipsed. Alex, you first. What are your thoughts about the mechanics of participating in a total eclipse of the sun, the do's and the don'ts?
Okay, so yes, as you pointed out correctly, in ancient civilizations, there's so many different stories about the solar eclipse. One is, of course, that it's a good omen, and the others, it was a bad omen. It depends also in what kind of way this event was being used by the kings and queens which were in position at the time being. So the Iranian people, for example, in Turkey, were very much in awe with the solar eclipse, and they would use the solar eclipse as a very good omen and a new beginning, a rebirth for the future times to come. While other groups in Sumeria would demonize this kind of point and see it as a very bad omen, and they wouldn't like people to go and be even outside on the street, if you like. So they would hide them away and would tell them off to be connected to the solar eclipse altogether. And they would have substitute kings and queens in place where they would hide the real ones in the time of the duration of the solar eclipse, but also 100 days before and after. So just to be sure that they would be in a safe position not to lose their throne. And that is the point, because in that specific time duration of the solar eclipse, the electrons which are in the ionosphere are spacing out, and it gives actually way for the real Earth matrix to connect with us humans on a quite monumental way. So we are usually quite obstructed by our Wi-Fi system, GPS systems, but in that moment of the totality in the ionosphere, the electrons are spacing out, they're moving away from each other, which means that the GPS systems are getting weaker. So, and we are having a window opportunity in that moment to reconnect to our planet and to reconnect to each other as well. So, and they knew that many thousands of years ago. That's why they put all these kind of odd kind of laws into place with the substitute king. It's like a text which is 800 BC. And if you see what's happening today with all the royals which are running, away from and hiding away at the moment. So, and all the the MPs in Britain are quitting their job, and there's a whole kind of weird things going on, and where you can see that they're really kind of quite worried that there's something else taking place very soon, and they know that they already lost the battle anyway. So it's just kind of, we just have to brush the table clean from all the last attempt of stopping our get together, as humanity.
Well, here is the time. Here is the time. Here is the place. Padma, your reflections on that question. What are the do's and the don'ts as you understand it regarding an eclipse?
In Vedic cosmology, it's advised to go inward, to meditate, not to cook during the time of the eclipse, to try not to fall asleep. And one of the reasons is the radiation from the sun is altered. So people say that you're corrupting its energetic field. So to try to be clean, to be, really focusing on the transformation that is coming through, and not to do any strange traveling, to not go out and not to do air travel if you can help it, long distance travel. Of course, sometimes these things happen. So people are undergoing a karmic shift. And just as Alex is saying, there's something rapidly transforming, especially in terms of our relation to the earth and our teachings here. So having some mindfulness around that, and the more we adhere to that, the better. So even 5 minutes is better than getting the glasses out and staring at it. Yeah. Right.
Well, we've got 4 minutes, 28.1 seconds, according to Dr. Ling here, with the totality of the eclipse, the highest point of totality, and that's going to be directly overhead this remarkable space, which looks so much like an umbilical, a conduit to Tara and to the Father. This is the epicenter of the zone of silence, about 2,000 feet up. I'll be there with Dr. Ling and a group of of souls during that 4 minutes 28.1 seconds. What do you anticipate will happen on that date? I know that we've got no flyover and no radar. No, it's a place where is renowned, Dr. Ling, for having no noise, no radio waves. It's a kind of a 0 point part of the earth. I don't know if David Sereda has ever heard of the zone of silence before in the Mexican desert, but we'll be there on that mountain. What can you tell us about it, Dr. Alex?
Yes, there's a huge magnetic field to start with, which is you can check it out yourself if you happen to be in the area. So all the compass, the needles are just spinning and spinning. So that's the start of something which is quite unusual, especially for the plant life, which is within that zone. So it has a direct impact on the cacti and all the different plants which are there. They're much larger than in any other area because they're affected directly by the magnetic field. Also, the plants, the animals are also affected by it, or there are some different insects in that specific area which are usually not seen. Besides all that, yes, this area is also known to attract meteorites because of that specific magnetic field. So a lot of meteorite hunters go there and pick the meteorites from the desert sand, and of course the mountain you just mentioned is 1,440 meters high. That's quite a specific number as well for many who know that number. And so there's also another story which I'm just researching, which is connected to the Laguneros, which are the people, the lake people. And this whole area used to be full of lagoons. So and these people in folklore, they're called the Eretillas. It's like a native Indian tribe. So they're supposed to be in folklore half human, half fish. And so there's a whole other story connected to that. There are still hot springs and underground lakes and cave systems underneath the exact area where we're going to be. So I take a scientist with me at the time when we are there. And so hopefully we can do a little bit of research in the area to discover a bit more of all of those ancient waterways. And that's also a story which came across in connection with the eclipse, that many people saying that old ancient waterways are suddenly coming up to the surface again and reconnecting with us. And that's also something which I've seen personally happening in many of the ancient sites.
Fabulous. Well, can't wait to be there with you. Oh, good Lord, I've got the sweetest little hummingbird that size right at my window. Look it up. You got this.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, indeed. So, David, bottom line, CERN. Why are CERN? I've got to let you try and see this creature. Oh my Lord, I've never seen such a small. I didn't know they come this size. No, she's left. David, why are CERN resurrecting their satanic witchery after the Super Hadron Collider has been in the doldrums for a long time, but they choose the 8th of April 2024 to start smashing atoms and trying to discover the God particle, and that notwithstanding their recent allusions to ghost-like apparitions manifesting around the particle accelerator. What do you think is taking place with CERN on the 8th of April?
Okay, so let me show you how accurate Masonic wisdom is to what I'm saying, and it's really accurate. You're going to see this in just a second. So you can see the day the chief cornerstone of the White House was laid was October 13th, the same date of the miracle of the sun at Fatima, and accurate to the date of last year's eclipse, which I'm going to go into in a second. But this was 220 something years before the miracle of the sun at Fatima. Why that date? Which again, I've shown is 2 orbits of planet 139, right? Which again corresponds to this eclipse. So if I go back to this eclipse, when you come into Mexico, you see, I mean, this is the darkest part of the cone, but the cone extends really wide. You're at 90% of totality in this huge swath, which will go right by where in 1531 the miracle of the Guadalupe Virgin occurs, again denoting a third planetary body to create a black crescent moon underneath her feet. So that happened right down here in my www.davidsereda.co in that region. And also at the X, last year's eclipse went right through the Chichen Itza El Castillo pyramid right here on the coast in the Yucatan. And in fact, X marks the spot of the Mayan Central. Mayan Central is X marks the spot. So you, Sasha, are in the region of X marks the spot of the bottom corner of the sacred 26.3 degrees. So why CERN, to answer your question? Because they know this. NASA and the early Masons go so far back knowing about the hidden planet. And the hidden planet, the planet of illumination, would be their greatest secret. And they don't want the world to see it. I mean, the cornerstone of the White House, this is way before Fatima. This is 200 and something years before Fatima. And when you really get deep into this, you really get deep into it, you learn about what are called transits. So Venus transits come in pairs, and those pairs, see, Fatima came in pairs. 33 years after Fatima, the Pope in the Vatican witnessed a second Fatima phenomenon right over the Italian city of Rome, about 33 years apart. Well, Venus transits look just like that. They come in pairs, and then sometimes over 100 years later, you won't see a Venus transit pair again, and those pairs can be 9 years apart, sometimes 20 years apart. So if we're looking at planet 139, which two orbits starting with December, starting with the winter solstice, depending on where exactly you count from, is October 13th, is two orbits of that. What I'm saying is those miracles of those double transits are very far apart, whereas Mercury transits are more common because it's closer to the sun. I speculate that all of the inside mysticism from the Masonic masters know about what we're talking about here, and that's why they're doing everything on that date, because they think, yes, something might happen in the quantum function. I'm very familiar with particle physics. I could talk for hours about it. They know that something might manifest in that moment that they've never seen before, they've never witnessed before. So you've got that. You've got the launch of the 3 rockets, and in making the resemblance of the serpent's tail, which is the lunar cycle. The lunar cycle, as I demonstrated, creates the serpent's tail. So it's no surprise that the deepest people inside of NASA and the Masons, and Alex could talk more about the Masons because he knows a lot about them, they know about these dates, which is why the chief cornerstone was laid on October 13th, 120 something years before Fatima on October the 13th again. And then Columbus discovers America on October the 12th, was it? I mean, you'll see the pattern. It just keeps repeating. And St. Francis dies right there. St. Teresa of Avila dies right there at mid-October. So those are ascension points. And the fact that Francis ascends on that ascension node, and this slope angle of the sacred triangle, in fact, the sacred triangle appeared right on the sun itself. If I could just, here it is, right here. So this is the A on the sun. Let me just show you this. This was a few days ago. This is our actual sun, image taken by NASA, the same A that Dr. Alex presented in the bowl, in the crystals, right? Look at this image I'm going to show you right now. This is our sun, and it's the same angle. You see the A, it's upside down. There's your cross. There's an eruption here. There's another arm of the A. You can't quite see the rest of the A in the top, but it is clearly there. And that's 26.3 degrees. That's the physical sun did that just a few days ago. And we're having things happening right here. Like my daughter and I go out in the morning on Easter, and my dog's bowl froze water, and that water froze and created, I think I have it bookmarked. Here it is. I have it bookmarked right here. This will be the last thing that I can show really quick. A Great Pyramid angle water crystal. You have to see this, because when you see physical manifestations as we're coming into this eclipse, it's really something. So there it is. You see, do you see this pyramid here? You see the baseline at the bottom. It's kind of sketchy. And you see the angle of this peaking pyramid right here. That's Great Pyramid angle, 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 14.3 seconds on a protractor. So how does that happen? How? If nothing will physically manifest in this eclipse, I would say that energies from within, this is a moment to be meditating as much as you can that day.
Right. I think that's the point we're all driving at here, because what I'm hearing, this is fascinating science, but what I'm hearing is that this event horizon arguably is where there is an intersect between the temporal spheres and the hyperdimensional spheres, or the celestial spheres, so to speak. And that because there is a perfect still point intersect, the imagining or the dreaming that we consciously undertake will affect the outcome and manifest the outcome, really as simply as that. Let's look to wind this down. I've got a few couple of questions from audience, but I did want to really get the bottom line on the CERN Superhadron Collider thing. Dr. Alex, your reflections, and I want to pass that to Padma. Why do you think they're exercising zillion-dollar scientific experiments at the exact moment of the total eclipse?
Okay, so to my knowledge, what they're going to do is testing the new accelerator, which is going to be, has been installed just to gain more momentum in the experiments which they are where they are colliding the particles. So also what I wanted to point out is something which not many people know, is that proton mail, probably everybody knows proton mail, because that's supposed to be some email which is quite safe. Well, proton mail, yes, yeah. So I don't know if you're aware that this has been created by some of the individuals of CERN in connection with their experiments.
Oh, I love it. I've been warning people for years since proton mail started. It just, I smelt a rat in that one. Very interesting indeed.
Yes. So and so many people have actually opened up their computers and their homes to these kind of energies as well. So I would just double check, that you're not connected on that day to proton mail. But the point is, what I'm making is it's just to harvest more memory, because they couldn't have so much data is needed to literally process their experiments. So that's where they were reaching out to people and saying, okay, this is proton mail, can be accessed your computers, right? So that was the official story. But on that day, yes, there is a test of the accelerator, but this is not the main reason, because from November on, they are going to have Large Hadron colliders. The Large Hadron Collider is going to be switched on through November, I think, almost on a daily basis. So this is just like the warm-up, and what they are trying to do, in my opinion, because I've talked to many scientists about it, and I said, okay, what's the real possibility here that they can actually do something and connecting to our ionosphere? Can they change like the electrons? What's the point here? And they were all kind of saying, well, the point is that they might have already put something in position, because we had numerous launches of many other satellites. Don't forget the Starlink as well, so which is flying over our heads. We had, I don't know even how many thousands of satellites being launched by Elon Musk and his company. So it's more complex than just one day. So I think, yes, definitely there will be a switch on of the accelerator, but it's kind of a knock-on effect of many other scenarios which have been put in place. Saying that, I don't think that whatever they're trying to do is going to succeed, because on that day the solar maximum is quite a high possibility that we have a solar storm. And don't forget that we as humans have also this great ability, you know, we are all creators, and we can do something actually against that.
Very good.
Yep.
I mean, if we know one thing, if we've all learned one thing, it's that this universe is the perfect feedback technology. It's what it does. As I've maintained for a long time, all she ever does is lean in and ask us, how do you want to play? And on a fractal level, you know, as well as at the macro level. So indeed, we've got these extraordinary guardians and these living principles, solar and other principles, which are the true guardians, really, of the light and of the frequencies. And I agree. I think that anything devilish that is dreamt up at this time runs the risk of whiplash and blowback on whoever perpetrates negative action. It's likely to come back on them exponentially. So I think those of us who are already sufficiently, again, meek of heart and are not in the thrall of fear or time or money and all of that, are already very much on the upshift. So possibly this eclipse is not going to be anything particularly special, because we've already cast ourselves into this emergent horizon. I certainly feel that way about myself. I don't think minute by minute there's going to make much of a difference, because I've already committed wholesale myself to this journey of morphogenetic upshift, so to speak. Very, very exciting, nonetheless. So here we have it. Trillions and trillions of dollars of accreted into taxpayers' money, dollars, which is the accreted life force, living plasma of millions and millions of human beings as they scuttle around the earth, failing to study their navels sufficiently. So that the tax dollars, the abnegated light, the abnegated and abdicated life force, totemized perfectly into coin, into Cronus's totem, money, taxes. That is what pays for this kind of satanic infrastructure and this diabolical technological efforts to prevent our natural born ascension, so to speak. I think we all agree there's no possible way that that's going to succeed. And yet we're still caught somewhat in the thrall of the fallen light of Atlantis, and a great many people are afraid, deeply afraid of what's to come. So as we close out this session, I do want to just bring a couple of questions in here. I think I start a couple of questions here, one of which was, what is the third secret of Fatima? Can you very briefly answer that, please, David? I know that you're likely to have a good answer. And Padma, if you'd like to chime in on this one, you're welcome.
Well, I think, of course, the Vatican controlled the children, and Lucia being the last, that they could never tell us the real truth of the secret. But I think what I'll call planet 139, with an orbit of 139, which caused the miracle of the sun, mathematically it did. I can prove that to any astronomer or mathematician later. I think that's the biggest secret, is where heaven is, the planet heaven. I actually am interviewing a woman, because I'm making a whole documentary film about this year, which will be very accurate. A woman who's a nurse who died, and when she went into the solar system, and she heard the voice of God coming from exactly where planet 139 is. But can a planet be invisible, cloaked with the technology of the gods and the goddesses? Yes. Is it antimatter would not be visible except at very high frequency energies, because we know this from particle accelerator experiments. We can take pictures of antimatter, but it only appears at very high energies, therefore at very high frequencies. So it may not be an antimatter planet. It may be cloaked by some means of technology, but I think that is the highest level secret in Fatima. In fact, when Mary appears to the three children, because we're talking about Fatima, the first date is May 13th. That's one orbit of 139. That's 139 days into the solar year. And then the miracle of the sun, October 13th, is 2 orbits of that. And the Bible names heaven. It's actually written in Greek. Oranos is what the Greeks wrote down for heaven. Oranos is a Greek god who cohabited with Gaia to create eventually the human race. Well, that's not Christian, but it's written originally in its original form in that language. We named the planet Uranus, which means heaven.
Very good. Thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful. Nibiru, is this anything to do with Nibiru? Dr. Alex Ling, your reflections.
Yes, I've been asked that before, and I think that many people think that there might be a return of Nibiru. So yes, we don't know really what's going to happen in that moment of the eclipse. So I'm not here to make any kind of prophetic claims or something. But for me, it's really just to be very honest. This is more about us as humans and how we are moving forward into a better future. So anything else, whatever is going to happen on that day, we will see. But the main point, and I cannot stretch that enough, is to just connect again to this planet and to each other.
Beautiful. Thank you. Padma, last question I'm going to put to you. Is this moment then similar in its potential to humanity as the harmonic convergence was in 1987?
Yeah, I feel it really is. That we have the horrible mechanism that of course propels us to action of things like the war in the Middle East. We have a lot of things that I think are going to zero point because we have the tools now. We have trauma-informed approaches, our multidimensional capacities for many people on the street. We're all looking at a more holistic level, and people are really going down to the zero pointing possibilities of their ancestral karma, their healing across their timelines in a way that maybe wasn't hitting quite so much. People didn't have that full multidimensional awareness in broader society. So I think we have actually a lot more available for the liftoff that we needed. We usually have a seed event where you don't have the critical mass. You had that the sort of late 60s. I think Rome took a while to fall. We always have this precursor, this lead-in, and the harmonic convergence was sowing seeds. And then I feel now we have enough people who have already gone through a certain stage of awakening and working with their own pain body, their own lower chakra disturbances, and who are really striving beyond the I. So I feel that we really have the possibilities to start to create the conditions for a golden age very soon.
Well, I think we're all in agreement there. Friends, that's it. 1.5 hours into this broadcast. So thrilled that at such short notice I could get these extraordinary minds. And David, it's so wonderful to see you again. I know the Lazarus audience adores you and keeps asking for you. So we've got to do some more intensive stuff together. I've got some ideas I'd like to cook up.
Oh, good.
Dr. Alex, I look forward to being with you in a few days' time in Mexico City and then the Zone of Silence. Let's bring that atom seed of the angelic human to bear at the umbilical of the earth. And Padma, delightful making your recent acquaintance, and thank you for your wisdom flame. All of you, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
All right, friends, that's it. He said, turning to the audience, thank you. You've got your marching orders now. Make of it what you will. Christy, thank you very much indeed for conducting these recent broadcasts with such incredible alacrity over the last couple of weeks. Much love to you all. Signing out now. Ending broadcast.